looks like here. I want to get started. Tonight we're going to be talking about last minute tips before you hit submit on the college applications because of course it is that time of year. And if you didn't do excuse me, early action or early decision, then you still have time to submit your applications since most deadlines are mid this month, December, or even January for some schools. So there's definitely still time to get those applications submitted. And what I want to do is go over what I think are the last minute tips you need to consider. Might take these off because there's a lot of glare. Yeah, that's better. There's a lot of tips that I have that I think are just, some people would say, like the kind of stuff that I, as an admissions reader, I've been an admissions reader for UW now and working for a UC school this year. And so these are kind of the little last minute things that I think you should pay attention to that could make some of you slip up if you gloss over it. So yeah, that's what I'm going over tonight. And plus, like I said, if you have questions about anything college admissions, go ahead and submit them to the chat, and either I'll answer them at the end of the video or answer them as I see them pop up. While you're here, do not forget to like the video so we get that YouTube gets it out to more people, and then subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing live videos every week answering admissions questions, so if you have them in the future, you don't have one now that you can't think of, I'll be doing this most likely every Wednesday. That seems to be my good day. Be on here every Wednesday to answer questions and then go over some topic about college admissions. Man, we get into a couple grad school topics, transfer admissions for sure, admissions for vets, undergrad admissions. I'm really familiar with the UC system and the UW system, so I can talk a lot about kind of what public colleges look for, and then some of the international applications as well, because that's some of the stuff I work on. So let's get started again, talking about last minute tips before you submit your application. Just the little fine details that you want to be looking at, that you don't want to gloss over for sure when you submit your application. Let's turn the music back up there because I kind of like that. Yeah, there we go. Something's bothering my nose now. Okay, but anyhow, so last minute tips. The first one I want to say is, even though this video is titled last minute tips, you should definitely not wait till the last minute. If you're waiting till 11:59 on the day it's due, 11:59 p.m., then something's bound to go wrong. So I would just always say, do not wait till the last minute. I'm the kind of person that says if you wait till the last minute, it only takes a minute. But in actuality, with a decision and something this important, like where you're going to end up going to college for the next 4 years, which is a decision that might impact your entire life, don't wait till the last minute. If possible, you should submit your application a couple days beforehand if you can. If not a couple days beforehand, a couple weeks beforehand. And I promise you, especially if you're submitting 5, 10, that's a lot of applications to keep track of, even though there is kind of the single click. I don't wait till the last minute. That's my first tip. Submit your applications a couple days before they're due. That way, if something doesn't go quite smoothly, you need to contact the admissions office or the committee rep to say, hey, I thought I submitted my application right, but actually I forgot this part. There's really no arguing but that you missed the deadline or anything like that. So submit it beforehand. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't do that 11:59 thing. It makes a cool story, but at the end of the day, it's not that cool to actually experience it. And I definitely would not do it. So that's my number one tip. Because if there is mistakes, you don't have time to fix them. If there is something else you need, you don't really have time to get it because the application's already due. So my next point, my next tip is review the requirements list before you hit submit. So, I'm mainly talking about college applications, but what comes to mind immediately, because I did this a lot, this is probably my most recent, work that I did for myself, as opposed to helping someone else, was, or for a job, was submitting scholarship applications. And scholarship applications, there's an essay, you gotta submit a transcript, you gotta submit your financial records, a tuition statement, there might be a budget, and that's different for every scholarship. It's going to be different for every college. It's going to be different for every grad school. So if you're applying to multiple schools, it's best to, and if you're only applying to one school, check that requirements list before you hit send on the email with the attachments, or before you hit submit on that application. Because it would suck to be denied or to be rejected because you forgot to include something that you had, like your resume. Wait, I have a dozen resumes that are targeted to different things, so I could have easily submitted it, and I didn't because I forgot that I needed it. So you don't want to have to run into that issue. So tip number 2: check the requirements list before you hit submit, and then go back to tip 1. Don't wait till the last minute, because again, if there is something that you need, recommendation letter, which we're going to get into next, resume, transcript can take days. An unofficial one, an official one could take a week to get to where it needs to go. So don't wait till the last minute, and then check that requirements list, and should be better off. And tip number 3 is, before you hit submit, you want to check with your recommenders. Make sure that they're still tracking that your recommender, that they are aware of the deadline for submitting the recommendation, because sometimes it's after the actual deadline that they have all the information they need. So if it's someone who has asked for assistance and like, hey, send me a copy of your personal statement, or hey, send me a copy of your resume because I want to be able to get these details right. I can talk all the other points, but I need the names and the dates and all that stuff because I can't remember. You want to check with them to make sure they have that information, because you would hate to think that, hey, I've submitted it, my recommender knows what to do, and then come to find out, 2 weeks later that they forgot, or they needed something and you forgot to reply to that email. So tip number 3 is check with your recommenders. Make sure they know the deadlines. Make sure they know what they need to submit, whether it's through a database on the college's website, or an email, or a letter of recommendation system. Those are all different things, and I've seen them all. So yeah, just provide that info to your recommender so there isn't this wonder about what you actually need to submit. Okay, so going to the next thing here is kind of my sweet spot. I love reading personal essays, college admissions essays, statements of purpose, whatever flavor you want to call them. Because I think it's such a good opportunity for applicants to tell the reader, tell the admissions officer committee member something about you that is compelling and interesting and admirable, because that doesn't necessarily always come through on a transcript or on your resume. There's just not enough space. It's not what it's meant for. Transcript and resume aren't meant for that purpose. So that's why I really enjoy reading personal essays, because it's that opportunity for me to get to know the applicant. It's like an interview. Think of your personal essay as an interview, and the question they ask you is, imagine you're answering it in an interview, and you're face to face with a person. You got to think and I'm getting off on a tangent here about personal essays, but you really got to think, what can I say? What can I write that is going to compel them to want to get to know me further in a weird romantic way, but want to work with me, want me to be a colleague, want me to be a student, want me to be a part of the culture on campus, want me to be a part of the environment, the learning environment that they want to grow. So that's really what I get out of reading personal essays. It's an opportunity for me to get to know an applicant in a way that compels me to give them a spot, really. Like, this person is interesting, they're cool, they're smart, they're proactive about learning, and those are all things that I think are admirable, and I would want to see in a person who's on campus. So anyhow, so my point is, proofread your essay, because while the grammar and the spelling isn't necessarily what an admissions officer or admissions reader is expecting to get out of your essay, that part is important, because if your essay is illegible, meaning it's so grammatically bad and stylistically bad, and there's so many spelling errors that you cannot interpret the message, that the message gets lost, then you've done yourself a disservice by wasting space, really, wasting an opportunity for you to, again, talk further about yourself. So proofread in that sense, spelling, grammar, but also proofread to make sure that you've answered the prompt. I see a lot of, you'll have a YS, like, why did you choose this school essay prompt, and the applicant will talk about their love for science, which is adjacent, of course. Those are two adjacent things. Like if you're going to a school because they have an incredible, world-renowned STEM program and you love science, that makes sense. But did you actually answer the prompt? You know, the answer for that is probably no. And while I'm still getting useful information out of either answer, it is noticeable when a person can't follow the simple directions of answering the prompt. So it just it's not necessary. Answer the prompt, proofread your essay, and when I mean proofread your essay, ensure you've answered the prompt. Check for spelling, grammar, flow, organization. That you got the right amount of details in there. So it's also wise to have someone else proofread or review, proofread, or whatever you call it. Slightly different meanings, but kind of the same thing at the end of the day. Have someone else review your essay. They're going to brag about you more than you would. They're going to find those or be able to point out those interesting details about you that you may not think are as interesting, because some of us don't like to brag about ourselves again. So have someone proofread it. I think that's beneficial because you get another set of eyes on there. And again, they can kind of say like, "Hey, I know you did this and you didn't talk about it, and I think it's a really great part of who you are. So maybe you should add that." But again, it's also a check for ensuring that you've answered the prompt, and then checking out that kind of grammar, stylistic stuff, tone, that could really detract from the impact of your essay. So do that. Another good point that I want to make. So my tip number, what's this? 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe this is number 5. And I'm reading some training files right now to kind of get back into file reading for this cycle. And one of the things I'm seeing on some of these files is a lot of students forget to put their 12th grade extracurricular activities or their 12th grade community service or their 12th grade additional professional educational learning and college prep. So what I mean by that is you'll see a student who has participated in baseball, for instance, or has participated in a student body for 4 years of high school, so 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and then the first semester of 12th grade, they're still participating, but they don't put 12 on there because it's not a completed cycle of that semester, or it's still ongoing or concurrent. And so for some reason, applicants are not including that 12th grade year of activities or volunteer service or work or employment, whatever it is. So I would say before you hit submit, ensure that you've added your current semester's activities. Some schools don't want the grades because they're unofficial and it would just be a guess. But if you're actively involved in a club, if you're actively involved in an extracurricular activity like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, you're doing something that you've done throughout your high school career, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and you're still doing it in 12th grade, don't forget that included. And that also goes for new activities. Like if you've started something, you've started working your first semester of 12th grade year, don't forget to include that, because those are details that I'll end up reading about in the personal essays, but are not included on the activity list because for some reason the applicant just didn't include it. I don't know. Again, it may be because they figure it's ongoing, so it's not a completed activity, it's not a completed year, semester. But definitely include that 12th grade year, that first semester, first trimester, whatever kind of system you're on, those activities, because that counts. Those count as well. My number 6 is verify that all your scores were sent, that you've actually paid for or gotten the fee waiver to submit official ACT and SAT scores to schools, especially if you've already taken the test. I know some schools will allow you to submit. Maybe, do I want to say that? Do some schools allow you to submit test scores up to the deadline? I don't know if I want to say that. So I'll just leave it at this point is be sure that you've submitted your test scores, whether that means that you've submitted them before the deadline or you're waiting for official scores after the deadline. Check that you've actually submitted ACT, SAT scores, because those things can take weeks. They can take, hopefully, not longer than that, but it can be quite a wait sometimes. So again, that's another reason not to wait till the last minute. But SAT, ACT scores are one of those requirements for most schools that is make or break. That your application is not gonna even get a real consideration if it doesn't have those test scores. So that's definitely a thing you want to check to make sure you've submitted and got sent on its way to the college before you hit submit. And then this kind of last one is less for some of the Common App Coalition app. Maybe if you're going to like a really private school or somewhere overseas that has kind of a different application system. But this is definitely relevant for grad school, med school, law school, those type of environments. Is presentation matters, and I guess this is important too. If you want to kind of distill it down to what do I need to do before an important deadline. So this could also uh, be applicable to college interviews. Is presentation matters. So that's my last tip. Is remember that presentation matters. So if you're submitting a statement of purpose and you're supposed to email it to the admissions committee, an email can go really bad if you're not careful about the presentation. So that's what I mean is, how is your statement of purpose formatted? Does it have a header? Does it have page numbers? Does it have a title? Does your email actually have a subject and a body and a signature at the bottom? Those are all really important considerations when it comes to presentation, and also presenting yourself as someone who can function in a college level environment, grad school level environment, and that means being able to submit an email successfully and submit an assignment in a way that is professionally presentable. Again, more applicable for grad school, but I think that applies when you're going out for college interviews. Is how do you present yourself? First impressions matter. Applications are also first impressions. So if you get something that's sloppy, has a bunch of punctuation errors, only has like one sentence for some of the personal essays, or they listed no activities, that is presentation. How did you present your application to the admissions officer, to the committee? All that matters. So, go over my tips real quick. I have to look down at them. Is don't wait till the last minute. Review what's required. Make sure you have a good grasp on that requirements list. Check with the recommenders that they're on track, that they know when your applications, your recommendation letter is due, that they understand whether or not it requires a letterhead, a return address, phone number, email. Check with recommenders, and then proofread your essay. Have someone else proofread it for style, grammar, tone, content, ensuring that they're answering the prompt. All those things are important at the end of the day. Be sure to add your current semester. So that includes your activities, your community service, your and one of the activities, your sports, all of that. So 12th grade does count. So be sure that that's actually on your application. Second to last is verify your SAT, ACT, GRE, MCAT, LSAT, whatever the score, your test score is. Be sure that you've actually submitted that information, that you've actually, like, your credit card didn't get declined, whatever the circumstance is, that your test scores are actually on their way. And then, last but not least, presentation matters. It is very important. First impressions are just as essential when you're meeting in person as when you're submitting an application or having an interview. So that means composing a good email, composing a personal essay, ensuring that it's presented in the way that you want people to see you, because that's the most important thing. But those are my tips for last minute things to do before you hit submit on your college applications. Don't see any questions in the box, so I will just let you know to like the video if you appreciate the content. Again, I'm trying to get on here every week to do lives, to go over one particular topic that I think you guys need to hear about when it comes to college admissions. And then subscribe to the channel so you get notified of my upcoming videos, my upcoming lives, and when I release my recorded videos, because I'm talking about everything: grad school, law school, med school, undergrad, UC, UW, all private school, Ivy League, scholarships, financial aid, all that. I'm going to be covering it over the course of the year, trying to kind of keep up with where we are in the admission cycle. So that's why today we're talking about what you need to do before you hit submit on those applications. And then ongoing, we're going to get more into scholarships and financial aid. So like the video and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye.